Band-Aid, plastic strip. Johnson & Johnson, made in USA.
Joseph Beuys war ein Fluxist der ersten Stunde. Fluxus heißt Fließen, in Bewegung sein. Fluxus heißt, dass Künstler live vor Publikum verstörende Dinge tun. Der Alltag, jede Handlung sollte zur Kunst erhoben werden. Und die Cellistin trug nur Zellophan.
Los sonidos que hace el cello modifican las imágenes que aparecen en los proyectores. Uno de ellos es el balanceador, o sea, funciona solo.
Yeah, you just have to go very slowly. I'm being still. Okay. How come we're out? Why are we doing? Oh, okay, good. Oh, well then I feel very sad. And performing with me, I have to thank, last night, tonight, and tomorrow, I've had fantastic assistance from the Venezuelan artist Claudio Perna and also Margarita Domingo. For 24 hours, we had permission to use the John F. Kennedy Staten Island ferry boat. And it didn't stop. It went on its normal cruises back and forth from Manhattan to Staten Island, yeah, which is what we wanted. We wanted for all these new people to see what we're doing. It's silly for us to play for all our friends. So the Staten Island ferry boat, we had it for 24 hours, and it was very difficult to get it because I had just been convicted, you know, for the topless case. But when I went to the Commissioner of Marine Aviation, he didn't know this about me. Which was very nice, you know, that he was able to appraise our work and see if it would be okay. And he said, fine, great. And then after I was given permission, then, of course, the Daily News and people like that started talking about, oh, how dare you give the topless cellist a ferry boat and all. But they stuck by me. They said that has nothing to do with the festival, and she is entitled to use this ferry. To get the Staten Island ferry boat was quite difficult. Are you kidding? They had never had any kind of art. They never had, you know, even a beautiful, sweet Van Gogh. So I like to go to these different places so we'll reach new people. And so we certainly reached new people. The Staten Island people, some of them were very upset about it. Others really did enjoy it.
How many artists and dancers and musicians participated in this?
Oh, I don't know, about 200, maybe more. Some in a very big way, some in a very small way. So we had these great things going, electronic art and happenings and events and things going on the ferry boat for 24 hours. And passengers would get on, and they had to pay that nickel every time, though. They had to get off and get back on. 40,000 people came to see us in the 24 hours, which is 29,000 more than normally get on the ferry boat on the Friday and Saturday weekend.
Wow. And the Staten Island Ferry is still the cheapest transportation in the country.
Yeah,
it's still 5 cents.
And it's still one of those beautiful rides you can have. So I fell in love with it.
Do you think it's a novelty?
I love antiques. Whenever I have time and money, I go antique hunting.
So you'd rather go for the antique than for a weird, way-out design in plexiglass and...
Well, when I really am tired of antique hunting, I go to hunting for the future.
Thank you.
Ich glaube, dass Paik das erste wirklich neue Cello seit 1600 gebaut hat. Er steckte 3 Fernsehgeräte in ein Plexiglasgehäuse. Es ist ein völlig neues Konzept und Sie sollten mal hören, was Cellisten darüber denken. Sie sind ganz verwirrt. Dabei ist es ein wundervolles Instrument. Nun, ich mache damit keine traditionellen Cellotöne. Ich mache TV-Cello-Musik.
(1964), kurz nach seiner Ankunft in New York, traf Paik die Cellistin Charlotte Moorman, in der er die ideale Partnerin für seine Arbeit fand. Paik schrieb in Zukunft fast alle seine Kompositionen für sie und ihr Cello, dem er jedoch immer interessante Versionen hinzufügte. Hier in einem Ausschnitt aus seinem Videostück Global Groove, das von ihm 1971 gebaute TV-Cello. Was ist eigentlich Paik's Botschaft?
Was meinen Sie damit, was ist Paiks Botschaft? Seine Aussage ist dieselbe wie die von Mozart, Beethoven oder Michelangelo, die eines jeden beliebigen Künstlers. Er reflektiert die Zeit, in der wir leben. Ich denke, es ist einfach logisch, dass ich das TV-Cello spiele. Und es ist ebenfalls logisch, dass ich mit dem TV-Büstenhalter spiele. Wenn Da Vinci heute lebte, würde auch er diese Materialien benutzen. Wahrscheinlich hätte Da Vinci sogar das Fernsehen erfunden. Vielleicht findet man irgendwo in Italien noch entsprechende Manuskripte, die das beweisen. Ich bin einfach sicher, dass auch die alten Meister heute mit den Materialien unserer Zeit arbeiten würden. Wir haben Tonbänder, Filmprojektoren, viele Arten von Synthesizern. All diese Dinge stehen uns zur Verfügung. Warum sollen wir sie also nicht benutzen? Sein Zen-Training, überhaupt der ganze Zen-Hintergrund ist sehr wichtig in seiner Philosophie und in seinen Stücken. Denn was er da tut, erinnert stark an den Zen-Meister, der dir auf die Hände schlägt, um dich in ein bestimmtes Bewusstsein zu versetzen. Das ist ein typisches Beispiel, wie Paik das Publikum schockiert, um ihre Gedanken auf einen Punkt zu lenken. Zum Beispiel damals, der bluttriefende Ochsenkopf über der Eingangstür der Galerie Parnasse.
Ja, man kann es sich einfach machen, indem man sagt, das ist der Asiate. Nicht? Man kann sagen, ja, das ist der Samurai. Man hat ja Bezugspunkte genug. Ich will mir es aber nicht so einfach machen. Ich glaube, dass Paik ein medialer Künstler ist. Also ein Wesen, das sich in den Momenten, in denen es schafft, in einen Zustand begibt, der aufnahmebereit ist. Das ist ein Zustand, in dem man einfach durchlässig ist. Und im negativen Sinne ist das eine Besessenheit. Wäre das eine Besessenheit? Was man sich jetzt positiv vorstellen könnte unter Besessenheit, das würde ich bei Paik so sehen.
Er wäre nichts wert, wenn er kein gesundes Ego hätte. Und wenn er nicht abschätzen könnte, wer er ist und was er kann. Also, wenn du nicht denkst, dass du der Größte bist und nicht an dich glaubst, dann kann ich mir nicht vorstellen, dass man das Zeug zu einem wirklich großen Künstler hat.
Er steht über dem ganzen kleinen, den Belangen des kleinen Ichs. Der Paik hat kein kleines Ich.
Er lebt nur für seine Kunst. Sie sagen selbstlos? Nein. Paik ist kein Künstler ohne Ego. Dann wäre er sein Geld nicht wert.
Februar in der Carnegie Hall. Anlässlich des 10. Jahrestages ihrer Verhaftung und Verurteilung wegen ihrer berühmten Aufführung von Nam June Paiks Opera Sextronique.
Is Mr. Park here?
Zum Thema Erotik in der Musik sagte Paik einmal: Nach 3 Emanzipationen in der Musik des 20. Jahrhunderts, seriell, indeterministisch und aktional, kam ich zu der Überzeugung, dass es noch eine weitere Fessel zu sprengen gilt. Und zwar die der vorfreudianischen Heuchelei. Warum ist Sexualität, ein vorherrschendes Thema in der bildenden Kunst und Literatur, nur in der Musik verboten? Paik inszeniert noch einmal seine Opera Sextronique, mit der er genau vor 10 Jahren in einem Kino eben jene Überlegungen ins amerikanische Bewusstsein transportieren wollte. Der Skandal von damals, ausgelöst durch die Verhaftung und spätere Verurteilung der topless musizierenden Charlotte Moorman, blieb diesmal jedoch aus. Paik wollte damit einen Schlussstrich unter seine Performancekunst ziehen. Video jedoch, so prophezeit Paik, wird noch eine große Zukunft haben.
In Amerika, man kann kaufen alles, inklusive Carnegie Hall.
Paik, can you give me the umbrella?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's very good.
And Frank, do you have the camera?
All right. Okay.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, wait a minute. You're back.
Okay.
Wait a minute. My nose is being cut off. I know that.
All right.
Wait a minute. Okay, dear. Hi. Now do it with me, okay?
All right.
Now let's do it together, right? Okay?
Und das muss ich sagen, das dankt ihm die New Yorker Künstler. Weil sie in ihrer eigenen Engigkeit, irgendwo sind sie ganz weit. Die Amerikaner haben einen Pioniergeist, der ist weiter als die ganze Welt. Aber in ihrem Puritanismus haben sie eine Verklemmtheit, die ist also fürchterlich, fatal. Und das hat Paik genau erfasst. Und da ist er hineingesprungen in diese Lücke. Und hat das, wie gesagt, aufgesprengt.
Paik, I really think you have a death wish going here. Oh, wow. Oh, wait. Oh. Oh, no, this is very serious. They're so big, Paik. I'm not an airplane. No, seriously. No, I'm telling you, if I put the cello here. Oh, I'll try though. Okay. Oh, no. Oh, geez.
Try something.
Yeah, well,
Without
why?
me,
Well, how can I? Let's try the smaller one. Really. I would like to say, for the benefit of my mother and and my relatives, you know, because I do have a master's degree in cello. I went to Juilliard. I studied with the great Leonard Rose, but I met Namjoon Paik, and I really did, from that point on, devote my life to the new works.
What other forms of cellos do you foresee in the near future?
Well, a friend of mine, Jim McWilliams, has already made me an ice cello and a chocolate cello. I mean, there's no end to what can happen.
Then you tell not to be on there, but don't worry. I will cut it off from there.
It's good, you shouldn't. You're being very bad if you do.
I will cut it off.
Charlotte Moorman, the Jeanne d'Arc of the Avant-Garde, and Nam June Paik, the George Washington of video art, at the ORF studios. A dense and intense experience.
For Linz, we're in 1982. The beginning of the piece, well, there are a couple of pieces that I want to do in Linz. The Sky Kiss by Jim McWilliams started in 1968 in Philadelphia. I first performed it at Rittenhouse Square. We did a test version of me going up suspended from helium-filled balloons, and we had children going up suspended from helium-filled balloons, and it was a very lovely sight. Jim McWilliams was then at the Philadelphia College of Art, and we were performing it at Rittenhouse Square. So that was very, very beautiful. A test, first time I was ever elevated. First time I ever experienced that weightless feeling, which is a wonderful feeling, by the way. Oh, I think I was only about 30 feet, and then it was bouncing up and down because it was beginning. We didn't know how much helium to have, how many balloons to have. And then the next performance was for the Sky Art Conference, and that was very, very logical, because Otto Pina has been doing sky art for so many years. That's one of the ways I fell in love with him, was that I saw this gorgeous photograph of, I thought, Otto flying in one of his pieces. It turns out it was someone else, I think, doing his piece. But a classic, gorgeous photo, and I thought, oh, I have to know that man. Anybody that is into sky art, I had to, in fact, it didn't even have a name in those days when Otto started doing it. And so I guess you'd call it environmental art or some such thing. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's how, when he said he was going to do a Sky Art Conference, I thought, oh, please, I must do Jim McWilliams' Sky Kiss. So I called Jim and I said to him, oh, well, they want to do a catalog. You know, MIT is very proper that way. They always do beautiful catalogs. And they'd like an official statement. Why do you call this Sky Kiss? And Jim thought that was the silliest question. He said, well, because the kiss is one of the most recorded erotic experiences. Now, I'm not so sure about that. I haven't done that much research on erotic recordings of erotic experiences. I hope to do lots more, but in any case, I did not know that the kiss is the most highly recorded sex act in books, literature, paintings, drawings, etc. And Jim told me that when my body goes into the sky, that my cello and I are kissing the sky. And I thought that was beautiful. It's lovely, because we are, you know. When policemen get afraid, like at MIT, they were afraid that something might happen. They didn't want me to go too high in the air. And I happen to know that the piece is such a happy piece. No one ever has bad thoughts. They never want to shoot me down or give me any harm. It just makes us all very, very happy.
Right. There's two more yet to go on, so. One more first.
If I end up in the Danny River Auto, I'm going to be very upset.
Hold it, Mark. We're not letting anything go. Yes, sir. But we still got to get...
Heb je aansluiten dat was? Oh, die gaat dus in een minuut.
Oké.
Larry, let it go. Let go. Oh, you're good. Some more. Okay.
Charlotte had a great temper, an enormous and wonderful temper. Charlotte could really get pissed.
She'd come like a hurricane, a volcano to the room, do something, scream something, and disappearing.
Charlotte was funny as hell. She had a very sharp wit and beautiful humor, and at the same time, she was dead serious. She was so concentrated in her performances.
She was so effervescent. She could interest anybody within a radius of a mile in her ideas and make them love it. Charlotte had this absolute irresistible quality. Even Port Authority couldn't say no to Charlotte.
She had this great vision that art should be very public and that art should be kind of free.
There was quite a magic spell
Charlotte is always Charlotte Moorman, whatever she plays with. She plays Joseph Beuys or John Cage, it's Charlotte Moorman. And she's a very Monroe-like, performance. She herself is interesting, and bow movement is just, accessory.
Charlotte had been a serious cellist. It was curious that a woman who, after all, played all the classics and played for a maestro such as Stockhausen was really going out on, shall we say, a limb to participate in this avant-garde movement.
She became known as the topless cellist. That was the piece that made the front page. And it's too bad because she did so much more. In 1967, on February 9th, she scheduled to do a piece that created by Paik, which was called Opera Sextronique. That was the flyer. She's holding a cello, getting ready to perform the piece. She's wearing underwear, bra and panties.
The composition, an avant-garde work by Namjoon Paik, specified that she played topless.
When I play the piece in the concert hall, they listen and they watch and they like it. It's the police that get upset.
The audience at the West 41st Street Theater came there by invitation only. Except for the police, they came with official badges and arrested Miss Charlotte Moorman for indecent exposure.
I think it made a big splash in Arkansas paper, and then mother was crying, and then, it was shame for whole family,
Well, my family is very upset about what I'm doing. They wish I'd go back to Bach. They feel that they wasted their time in encouraging me toward an education. And in fact, they feel I'm disgraceful.
She was tried before a magistrate or a criminal court judge a couple of months later. And after a trial of a couple of days, with a lot of testimony on her behalf, the judge came out with a decision which found her guilty.
Judge Shalik asked what size of a cello she played. And says the Charlotte had the largest size of a cello. Then that is also increased her criminality, because you have to spread your leg wider when cello is larger. Understand?
Is it an uncomfortable instrument?
No.
Does it look so terrible for a lady to play one of those? I think.
It feels good.
Does it?
Found her guilty, but suspended sentence.
After her convictions, they called Raspovich, which in Washington then. What do you think about his conviction? And he said, I side with judge. She should be put into jail, and not because of indecent exposure, but for unfair competitions. Understand?
She was on the list of approved classical performers paid by the Board of Ed to tour the schools of New York. It was a fairly good part-time job, and she was taken off their list of approved musicians because of this conviction.
She was doing stuff when you could still shock people, and then that's not possible anymore.
Edgar Varese, a great composer, once called me Jeanne d'Arc of new music, and others think I'm an idiot.
She didn't like being known as the topless cellist, and yet she would exploit it. When she was on the Johnny Carson show and these other television shows, for example, sometimes fun was being made of her, and she would go and she would still do it. She still saw it as being important to be in front of a big audience like that. She couldn't have gotten to otherwise.
They laugh out of embarrassment or lack of exposure or whatever. That's really not my problem, because I have to play the piece as well as I can, and I'm so busy with all the various things. These pieces are hard. And in the Cage piece, where he's written the string part and all these other sounds, if I don't do it at the right point with a stopwatch, then it's like adding a beat to Boccherini.
It was never nudity for the sake of flaunting anything. It was never for the sake of eroticism. It was nudity as part of a costume, as part of an expression of freedom.
Well, the funny thing is that when she did a topless performance in New York, that was the one thing she did not invite me to. And I'm just wondering whether she thought I was too much of a square or something.
It's kind of embarrassing to know that she went to such great lengths to attract attention. It may not have meant attracting attention to her. She may have just thought of it as a real art form.
Her early years, she was pointed towards being a Southern belle. She was in a beauty contest in Little Rock where she won. 1952, Miss City Beautiful. Somehow they lopped off the E of Charlotte and they censored out the R of Moorman, so you get Moorman.
Well, she was a Southern belle and I was a Tokyo buzz or whatever. And we kind of, we came from a a similar background, shall we say, in that sense. And we were idealists.
Charlotte was the sort, a very attractive, smiling little girl, round-faced, eager to please, and she would stop by after class. I had her in an English class to say something or other to me.
The reason I remember her so well is because she was lugging her cello often on the bus every day. This is the 1951 pics when we were seniors. She was in the National Honor Society, the Southern Airs, which was a girls' social club, and a bookstore monitor. She wore very dark lipstick, and that was unusual in that day.
She was extremely bright, very intelligent, but very reserved, guarded. She did not frolic, at least in school.
Charlotte was the only person in Little Rock High School that I knew that had a risque dress. And it was perfectly straight in the front, long sleeve black velvet. But the whole back of it was out. And in 1951, that was a rather risque dress for a high school senior. And I wore Charlotte's dress in the senior play.
Charlotte wasn't what you would call in. And the cello was sort of a funny instrument, you know. And I can remember, too, her hairstyle. She wore a pompadour when they weren't being worn, and a snood, if anybody remembers snoods. They are those little crisscross things that hold your hair up.
I don't recall anybody else in Little Rock High School wearing a snood. Charlotte had a walk that has been described as a gait when she would go down the hall. And it was very purposeful. And obviously she was going places.
Charlotte Moorman.
Little Rock was just too small for Charlotte. That was the feeling I got.
Charlotte was going to float down the main street of Little Rock, and to do this there were power lines blocking the tethers of the helium-filled balloons. So Charlotte was so well known at that point, and I think they were so proud that she was from Little Rock, even though she did things that I'm certain were pretty scandalous to the people that knew her when she was growing up, or her family. And they moved the power lines out that afternoon, and the parade went down, and Charlotte was leading there, having a great time playing the cello, floating in the air.
So Charlotte was in the air, and police were taking people out of the fountain, and we were trying to dodge the nylon ropes of the repellers going down the building. It was like a good time was had by all.
I would like to say, for the benefit of my mother and and my relatives, you know, because I do have a master's degree in cello. I went to Juilliard. I studied with the great Leonard Rose, but I met Namjoon Paik.
Paik, come here.
They spurred each other on.
Paik, we're rehearsing your piece.
Paik, I think, was, inspired by Charlotte, and Charlotte, lived and breathed for Paik.
Shake that, and then shout, son of a bitch, or something like that. Don't say such thing, but three letter word. Okay, then.
Do I play cello? Oh, come here. Do I play cello or not?
Later.
There was a real case of art love. So there are two children of the New York of the early 60s who met and formed this alliance that was to, I think, completely catch the imagination of the art world worldwide, because they traveled all over the place and shook things up.
We'll all get put in the goddamn jail, you know. That's true, we will.
He was not merely there to help her. He was doing his own artistic thing, and he could be ornery and difficult, as she could to him.
Paik. Paik, I'm dripping wet, and so is the cello. David, I don't know what to do. He's not here. Oh. Sir, Maestro, could you find Namjoon Paik? Namjoon Paik. Tell him I can't move until he appears.
She was really the muse for Nam, and Nam really did tremendous amount of work directly designed about, inspired by her energy, by her darings, and also humor.
Paik made the first new cello since 1600. He made 3 TV sets in a plexiglass case. It's a totally new concept. Now, I do not make traditional cello sounds with it. I make TV cello sounds with it.
I did see her when she performed with a brassiere that was two television sets, which Namjoon Paik had made for her, and she played the cello.
It was first time that Guadalcanal young people saw TV itself, and first time on that first chance for Charlotte TV Bura, okay? So it's a real boobachu.
Some of the work she has done with Namjoon Paik are some of the most important works of art, of avant-garde of the 20th century.
To me, the Avant-Garde Festival is her work, is her artwork. What she did was to give a platform for the avant-garde artists.
I knew of her work both through my friends and through an extraordinary 2-page spread in the New York Times, which made her into the princess of the avant-garde, which seemed like the land I wanted to live in.
Here's the one where she's underwater. This is a piece by Jim McWilliams, and it's called The Intravenous Feeding of Charlotte Moorman. This was based on her having had an operation earlier that year where she was on a lot of tubes.
Well, a friend of mine, Jim McWilliams, has already made me an ice cello and a chocolate cello.
Peter Moore, did you get a picture of them putting the chocolate on there?
That's chocolate. That is the chocolate cello performance. Jim McWilliams did a lot of Charlotte's most famous pieces. It's the sort of the key piece at each avant-garde festival.
What I was always doing with Charlotte was trying to create a visual phenomena with her, because she was very beautiful.
She did it in Edinburgh, Scotland for the Glasgow Festival, and she developed frostbite. And we went to a pharmacist in Glasgow, Scotland, and she was saying to me, how can I tell him? I mean, how do I say? I was playing nice cello, it was against my breast. We walked in and Charlotte said, blah, 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 you know, and I have this frostbite here, and sure enough, the pharmacist said, how did you get it? And Charlotte said, my husband and I were making love up in the mountains at night, and it was freezing cold. Right? I swear, it was just brilliant.
I suppose when she played the chocolate cello, she was nude for the chocolate to go on her body. But actually, she didn't appear nude all the time.
Mostly what you remember is chaos and hysteria and a real skepticism that this could, by any stretch of imagination, that this thing could actually work. What really was somehow able to make it work was the fact that she would ignore that there was such a thing as a financial factor.
She was very naive, and but wise. I mean, a lot of people would have probably perceived her as being very shrewd because she accomplished a lot. But it was a very naive, beautiful, loving force, you know, and that's what kept her going.
When I met Charlotte, I was public affairs director for the MTA. I said I would see if I could help in persuading the lawyers and the bureaucrats and the engineers to accept the festival for Grand Central, and the whole station had decorations and streamers and dancers and mimes and all sorts of things.
She was really creating the atmosphere of things to be realized, to be happy.
But not in the army.
Not army. That
total freedom.
She was not type of museum organization or some kind of these strange curators who have their pencil thing. She really was keeping everything in continuous improvisation, changes.
There was a whole army of people, her regulars, that would show up for those festivals that would think up work for a year to have stuff ready for her little unveilings of them.
When she won at Shea Stadium, she actually moved the New York Jets, I guess was the team, out of Shea Stadium for the day.
I wanted her to be on a flying trapeze, and this was at Shea Stadium. So I contacted somebody who built professional circus flying trapeze rigging. We had the cello on one swing, and Charlotte was brave enough and drunk enough to get up on the other swing, sit there, and we pulled her back and forth, and she lashed out and played the cello.
I had to twist some arms to get the passenger ship terminal. It was very touching that Charlotte dedicated that festival to Evelyn and me. I didn't go to Floyd Bennett Field when this was in the middle of the fiscal crisis, and I was press secretary to the mayor at that time. I got a call from Charlotte one day, and she said in her drawl, "Sid, I need the salt spreaders from the sanitation department. We want to do an orchestrated ballet." I said, "Who's going to pay the drivers?" I said, "There are things I can do for you, and there are things I cannot. That one, we're not going to do."
She did Sky Kiss with me, I did Sky Kiss with her. And she brought the title into this collaboration, and I brought the know-how to make her rise high. And the music became more intense with every time we did Sky Kiss. She said there was nothing she enjoyed more than rising in the sky, with a possible exception of sex on occasion.
She found places that really were enlivened and put on the map by her activities, by her festival. And she finally would get some sort of minuscule grants from various government agencies. They were totally underfunded for what they achieved. I mean, there was a big bang for a penny.
So they made use of Charlotte, as a vehicle, but they didn't give her any money. She was constantly really starving, starvation. Every meal was a problem. Every taxi ride was a problem.
When I met her in the first, I think, afternoon or second afternoon that I was working with her, I was totally saddened by her story that she was suffering from tumors and that she was being treated for them and that they caused her from time to time a great deal of pain.
She was dying for several years, with incurable cancer, and nobody thought of it as incurable with Charlotte, because she had this kind of determination that the sickness was a pain in the ass to her, but not the end of the world.
I refuse to think of her in that sense. I never connected her with her illness in a way, because she ignored it.
Her cancer afflicted her for probably a dozen years before she died, and caused her to have to stop producing the festivals and limited her touring, so that she was a great presence. But how she might have developed had she kept her health, we'll never know.
Because Charlotte had a different rhythm of life. She lived mostly at night. I only know 2 or 3 other people who called as frequently in the middle of the night.
She was notorious, let's say, if she had a plane to catch, she generally was at least 24 hours late for an airplane.
She's always late, and then if people wait and get impatient, show must be damn good to be captured, and none of avant-garde piece is that good.
Yes, she had to build attention, she had to build the energy, she had to build this situation in which she had to perform through the ear or the needle. It was that tense and it was that intense.
This was Charlotte's room in the Paris Hotel, and this was the day she was moving out of the Paris Hotel. This was the afternoon of the day when she was supposed to be out by midnight. I opened her closet door, and instead of clothes, all these bags of scraps of fabric fell out. A whole closet full. And I said, well, maybe we can put these in the garbage. And she said, no, you can't. Those are all the scraps from all the performances of Yoko Ono's cut piece that I've ever done. Mm-hmm. And I'm saving them for Yoko.
Charlotte always kept doing my work. And was trying to tell me that, remember your roots.
She was big on hearts. She'd send out Valentine's Day cards and New Year's cards with hearts on them. But, if she got around to sending them out, a Valentine's Day card might arrive in August. And certainly, we found huge amounts of mail and correspondence on its way out that just never made it out the door.
One day I got a letter in the mail from Charlotte, and on it, there was a stamp with John Cage's picture on it. Well, I was really surprised because I had never heard of this stamp being issued. So I said to Charlotte, where did you get that John Cage stamp? She said, I printed them up. I said, Charlotte, I think that's a federal offense. She said, no, it's a federal offense that they haven't put out a stamp for John Cage.
Oh, she says, I'm going to give a concert at Carnegie Recital Hall, and I absolutely need a chimpanzee, and I particularly would like to get one that is well known. And I said, well, I think there is a chimpanzee that went up to space, and maybe you should try to find out whether you could get that. And she said, oh, she thought that was a very good idea.
I said to her, Charlotte, how are we going to get an 8? She said, not to worry. And an 8 showed up on opening night with his trainer from New Jersey.
Charlotte had great style, and she knew quality.
She had this thing about wearing real concert dress and, you know, not demeaning it by dressing casually. You know, she treated it as a real concert.
She loved to perform. Charlotte loved to look like Charlotte. She loved her gowns. She would ask sometimes in that performance, or when we do that, can I wear a gown?
Charlotte was always needing money, and I say to Charlotte, you should create an object that you could sell, and then you'll have money. And she said, my God, why didn't I think of it before? And so with an art dealer, they did this multiple object, and they sold like hot cake, and suddenly Charlotte had her own money. It was like a miracle.
This is a picture of Charlotte and me embracing at a dinner which the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council held honoring me, and as part of that I was able to designate an artist, a deserving artist, for a grant of $10,000, and I designated Charlotte, who was then quite ill. She in turn gave me the neon cello, but her memory is more important to me because once you knew Charlotte, you no longer forgot her.
I remember in working with her, it wasn't long before I began to hear about how she was helping this or that artist who was having this or that kind of trouble, bailing people out of jail on drug raps, or helping people with alcohol problems, or penniless people.
I don't mean she was the mother, but she had that self-sacrifice feeling. Yeah. Always self-sacrifice.
Self-sacrifice. You know, she was giving herself so much. You know, probably this is one of the most generous person we ever know.
She was calling from her hospital bed, and they were prepping her for the surgery, and she wanted to have the operation filmed so that she could be part of the performance. She said that's the only way she could get through psychologically this operation.
The hospital said no. The doctor said no. Nobody wanted it. She wouldn't take no for the answer. So I went in and we did a 16mm film of her biopsy in the surgery room.
After the operation, Yoko Ono sent a bonsai tree as a gift, and Frank, carrying it in, scratched his eye with the twig of the tree and tore his cornea. And Charlotte called me from her hospital bed one day after surgery, saying that she thinks Frank's in worse shape than she is. And she told her physician she wanted to visit Frank in the hospital. And he said, you have all these bottles and drips and equipment. He says, you need an ambulance to take you. He says, well, I'll get an ambulance. And he said, well, I wouldn't order it. Well, she got Yoko Ono to send a limo, and believe it or not, she went to see Frank at Manhattan Pioneer Hospital. That's the kind of gal she was.
If you talk about Charlotte, you cannot leave Frank out. Because without Frank, Charlotte wouldn't have a physical existence since 1970 or so, you know?
He was her nurse on a 24-hour-a-day basis, and I mean that because she could not sleep through the night. She had to, during the last few years, she needed injections every several hours.
The guy's sweetheart, really, to everybody.
She fell in the Grand Canal, and they had to go and give her a tetanus shot, and the doctor in Rome said, How did you, the tetanus shot then forced her to blow up into her tooth and a swelling of the mouth and this and that. And the doctor said, my God, what happened to you? And they didn't want to say, Paik accompanied her to the doctors, they didn't want to say that she had gone into the Grand Canal because it's part of a composition. So Paik said, I hit her.
Since Neptune Paik is in Germany, my husband, Frank Pileggi, is assisting me with the piece right now.
I think Frank was just sort of at times worn out by dealing with Charlotte. I mean, Charlotte could be a real energy drain. Frank was a very dedicated man and a marvelous person, and there was just this time where, I think he was wondering about his own life, his own identity and things of that sort. I think finally he just gave it up to her, which was an enormous gift for somebody to give to another person.
He died about a year and a half after she did. He died. She died in the fall of '91, and Frank died in June of '93. Very suddenly, had a heart attack.
I've increasingly seen Charlotte as somebody who was more than an effective and provocative or evocative, clowning, avant-garde performer. I feel that sometimes she's seen too much as a kind of neo-Dada person from the 20s. She was way beyond that, somebody who would really expand an art form.
She had a certain energy and a pizzazz about her that few possessed, and a spirit. I mean, she just was determined to play what she wanted to play, live the life she wanted to live, and she never compromised.
She was always concerned to make the art of the present important in its time and to bring it to the largest number of people. And the best way to remember Charlotte is to practice what she preached, which was to let no barrier prevent you from making your dream happen.
I thought that was symbolic of her life, even though she might have been broken. The pieces were all growing as a memory in each person's soul. And one day we're going to bring it together again.
Paik and Charlotte Moorman are seen in his Soho loft in 1965, preparing the performance of a work by John Cage. Miss Moorman is a cellist from Little Rock, Arkansas, who once was a regular member of the American Symphony Orchestra.
I will always obey mother and dad. I will be extra careful.
Eventually, somebody will make.
Neptune Paik and I had premiered in Europe his topless opera Sextronique. We'd had no trouble. There was no problem with any nudity whatsoever. I have to tell you that in Germany, where we played the piece, they looked at us and they either liked it or they didn't like the piece. It didn't bother them that I was half nude. Well, Paik decided we would do it in New York in February of 1967. I'm going into my own personal career at this point because it seriously affected the festivals from that point on. I was known as the topless cellist. I had incredible trouble getting permits, and I mean, to get the public spaces to begin with, they think you're crazy. If you're the topless cellist has been convicted on nudity charges, secondly, then you really are going to have trouble. My next festival, I had decided I wanted the Staten Island Ferry. I love that ferry boat. I don't know how you feel, but I love that ride. And naturally, I chose the grandest one. I got the large one, the John F. Kennedy, because it had to have all of our artists on it, and it had to be a good ship. I couldn't take one of the little dinky ones. So that's what I've been working on. That was my idea for the fifth festival. And I went back to Europe with Paik after this Central Park Festival in '66, and we did our pieces, and it was a big success, and it was great and everything. Well, we had some wild stories. We had a few problems, but I won't go into my personal career problems there. Where I'm going to do it now is with the topless case, because it was such a trauma, such a tragedy, that it's something I'll never get over. I think it was terribly unfair. I'll never do the opera Sextronique topless piece totally for New York because I don't think they deserve it. They stopped me in the middle of the performance. What happened is that
we had decided to do it in New York, and we called our lawyer, Jerry Ordover. It was his birthday dinner, and we said, Jerry, is there any problem in doing this piece legally because there are police around? He said, what do you mean there are police around? I said, they're here. We're rehearsing here at the Filmmaker Cinematheque, and there are police here. He said, no, as long as you don't fornicate on the stage, you're okay. Well, that wasn't part of the piece, so we were okay. So, well, there are some pieces that have that in it, but this piece didn't. So I found out that the police were there. I was curious, well, why were they there? We were not used to having them there when we rehearsed. And the reason they'd come to the Filmmaker Cinematheque was it was a raided premises because of Jack Smith's Flaming Creature film. It had been confiscated in that theater. That was considered lewd and obscene, and therefore the police had to come back on a regular basis and raid the premise. So they came there and they found this Oriental guy, Namjoon Paik, and this string player, Charlotte Moorman, and they called in headquarters and they said, what do we do? This woman's half naked, and this Oriental guy is running around with all these electronics, and they said, well, stick around and see what happens. Now, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know that they were told to stick around or anything, because we called our lawyer and everything. Actually, we called Billy Kluver. And we said, help, what do we do? And Billy Kluver, who's the director of 9 Evenings, very important in the EAT, Art and Technology Movement, he advised us, and because just seeing the police scared me, and I wanted to know. So I called a few important people. They told us not to worry, that the Ballet African had performed in Manhattan a few weeks before, and they had been able to perform topless. It was their native costume, or no costume, whichever way you look at it, and we were okay. So we started our performance, and lo and behold, the police stopped us. And they took me off to jail, and this was pretty awful. I'd never been arrested in my life, and the women that I was put in prison with, one had murdered her husband, and she kept banging her heads against the bars, and she kept saying, I hope he's dead, the son of a bitch, I hope he's dead. It seemed she had stabbed him. And another woman was brought in for prostitution. Another woman was brought in for dope. She had broken into a drugstore for dope. Another woman had been brought in for stealing because she just liked to steal things. And then they turned on me and they said, what did you do? I said, well, I played the cello partially nude. And they said, what's a cello? And it was awful. Like this one woman tried to pull my hair out. And all of the search they put you through. It is so terrible. And fortunately, I was having my menstrual period, so I bled all over the woman. But what they do is they search your anus, they search your vagina. For drugs, I guess. I don't know why they do it, and I just bled all over her. And they don't let you have your own Kotex, your own Tampax, or whatever. They furnish you with... And the search was kind of funny, if you can find anything funny about that whole situation. They said, stripped from your waist down. Well, since the third part of Opera Sextronique, if they had let Namjoon Paik and I continue, the first part was with the electric bikini and the blinkers. The second part was topless with the long formal skirt. The third part was bottomless with the football jersey and the helmet. And the fourth part was totally nude behind a bomb. So I had to be ready for those next 2 arias. So all I had on was the long skirt. So when she said strip from the waist down, and this is a cold February night with 13 inches of snow on the ground, I just undid my skirt and I was naked from the waist down. So that took them back a little bit. And this is in front of the other prisoners. Then, women prisoners. Then they make you bend over and everything, and they search your rear end and all, and which is just very humiliating. Then she says, okay, strip from the waist up. Well, I was already topless because that's how they found me. And at least I had put on a jacket, so I took off the jacket, and there I was, totally nude. And they thought this was a little bit unusual, lack of clothes for a February storm night of 13 inches of snow. Well, the trial went on 4 days after this. We ended up with a lawyer that Jack Kroll, the cultural editor of Newsweek, senior editor of Newsweek, got for us, Ernst Rosenberger, who is now a judge. And Ernst Rosenberger had defended Lenny Bruce, and he knew a little bit about the obscenity law, and he tried his best for us, but still, I'm a convict. I was convicted. But what happened as a result of that is that Old Calcutta, Hare, some pretty important things were allowed to happen in New York City, and it became a law then that you could have willful partial nudity in an artwork, whereas it had been a law before that that you couldn't have, and none of us knew that. No, and even at the end of the case, Anna Halpern came in with her fantastic dancers and danced at Hunter College, nude, totally nude, the men and the women. And Clive Barnes had reviewed that, and Frank saw that, so he called Clive Barnes, and the last day of my trial, Clive Barnes came in and testified that he had indeed reviewed the Anna Halpern dancers, and it was a liberating experience, and it was beautiful art. But it didn't help me. I was still convicted, but I did help the law in New York State. Well, as far as getting my festivals in,
So one point, in some ways, that case was instrumental in removing censorship from the arts totally, because I think that led to a lot of precedent.
It was the precedent case, and it did change the law.
Yeah.
Whereas the law had clearly stated you could not have willful nudity of any kind, partial or total. You couldn't have any nudity. Now, when you walk down Times Square, I don't know if you think that what happened is so good or not. In the name of research, I love to go to the topless bars and everything and see what's going on. And like on my birthday, I get Frank to take me to see the topless bars and all the porno shops and everything. I like to see what's going on. And I don't know that it's so good that we've opened up and everything has become so liberal. I don't mind it as long as it doesn't harm other women and other men. I don't know about that, because I really cared about the art end of it. What these massage parlors and pornographic stores have done is they've extended that definition of art into their multi-million-dollar money-making porno shops. So, and had my case not have changed the law to begin with, there would be no way for them to be existing. So we've got the good and we've got the bad with this new law. But now with me privately, my grandmother had a heart attack, because this was first page, I don't know where you were in 1967, but that was front page news in Europe and America. Now nobody could care less. But in those days, that was a big story, that this topless cellist. And it seems that one of the things that offended people the most was my classical background and a cellist being partially nude. Dancers, other people, somehow it's okay, but a cellist, a classical cellist being partially nude, it really offended them in so many ways that I don't know, but it affected my family severely, affected me severely, affected my concert dates. Not in Europe. Europe had seen the piece already and had seen me nude many times. And I wanted to do the Stockhausen Originale, which is a score for a painter to come be himself, a poet to come be himself, a musician to come be himself, and it's all timed in a clock, and you come at a certain time and you do your thing. And it's structured in that fashion. He doesn't tell you what to do while you're on stage for that amount of time, but you have to follow the time schedule. So I went to see him, and he was at that time with Mary Baumeister, and they were in New York City. And I said, I want to do a piece of yours in the festival. He said, no, my pieces are big. You have to have a large orchestra, large chorus. I said, no, I want to do the Originale, the theater piece. And he said, well, I did that for certain people. I did that for Hans Helms. And I said, well, we've got Allen Ginsberg here, the poet. He said, well, you need Caspari, the director. I said, we have Alan Capra, who invented the happening, more or less. What a better director do you have than that? He said, well, you have to have Paik. And I said, what's a Paik? And it turns out that it's a human being, Nam June Paik. And I said, well, why do I need him? And he said, because I wrote the part for him, Paik. That's what is on the score, and no one else can play Paik but Paik. I said, oh my Lord, for that one person I can't do it. And he said, well, he's always wanted to come to America, And his family have a little bit of money. They could give him the money to come. Now his family doesn't exist anymore, but at that time he could have borrowed the money from them to come to America. He said, now I'll give you his address in Germany. You contact him, invite him over, tell him that I have given permission to do the Originale on the provision that you come do your realization of your part. Go back to the Hotel Paris, and I'm not lying to you. The minute I get in my room, the phone rings, and it was Paik. He said, Paik here, and I said, where? He said, here in New York City. I thought that was incredible. What had happened, we found out years later, is that Mary Baumeister found out from Allison Knowles that Paik was here. He had just arrived, and she says, oh, we're trying to locate him. We were just talking about him to do the Originale. You should call this girl named Charlotte Moorman, and gave him my number, and that's how. But I always wondered for years how it was that he called me at that very moment. He said, we'll meet. And I was answering phones part-time because the American Symphony was over. Now, what I was doing in the traditional world, I was playing the American Symphony, I was doing TV jingles, I was just beginning all these things. But in the summer, the season was not on, so I answered phones at night on the weekend in order to make money. So I told him I had to go to work to this answering service. He said, I'll meet you there. So he did. I don't know how, you know, he's incredible. How I could understand the New York subway system. He just arrived in New York, and he was able to find his way over to the east side to the answering service. And we were sitting there in the Madison Cafe, and he said to me, oh, he said, we do Originale, and so-and-so, Allen Ginsberg would be a great poet, and I'll be a great painter, and talking about all these people that were going to do these wonderful parts. And Dick Higgins was in it, and Jackson McLough, and Robert Breer, and it was just an incredible, it turned out to be an absolutely fabulous performance. And we did it every night for a week. Excuse me. So he helped me to get that together. And David Berriman and Mary Baumeister translated the German script into English for our performers. Max Newhouse was a percussionist. I was a string player. And we had to have a chimpanzee. That was very difficult. I never will forget that. But anyway, so we were sitting there, and he said, oh, I make peace for you. And he said, we become partners. I'm looking at him, and I'm wondering, why do I need him for a partner? I didn't understand what, I do peace for you. He said, you play swan, you stop, you go into water, you come out in pajama, and you come out wet, and you finish swan. And I'm thinking, what? I didn't understand why. I mean, who needed this? And he was telling me all these pieces, this striptease piece that he's always wanted to do. He's always wanted a beautiful girl to striptease, and he wanted me to play cello and take my clothes off. And I can't believe that I'm sitting here talking to this Oriental man about these things. And but something about him, he's so serious and so strong that I listened. And we became partners. And everything in the world has happened to us now as a result. I don't know if you want me to go ahead now and start telling you what all has happened, or if you want me to finish telling you, oh, just to him alone. When we did the Originale, someone came and handcuffed him to the scaffolding, because Alan Caprow had the scaffolding. It was very important that he was directing from and everything. And Paik was drinking from his shoe. He had put shaving cream and beans and ketchup on his face, and he was drinking from his shoe, and someone came and handcuffed him to the scaffolding. And I thought that this was part of the piece. I didn't know that. I thought that, you know, that this was part of what Paik wanted to do on purpose. And he was screaming and screaming, and everybody thought it was part of it, and nobody paid any attention. Finally, someone came back to me and said, Paik is in pain. This is sabotage. Oh, someone has handcuffed him to the scaffolding. So we tried to get the janitor. The janitor didn't have a hacksaw, so I called the police. I told them that, well, we were doing a performance and that one of the artists was handcuffed to some scaffolding. Would they please bring a hacksaw? Now, Alan Caprow had said to me, he was trying to de-feminize me, and he put me in a gauze gown. I was totally nude under the gauze gown. You could see straight through it. And it had the opposite effect. It did not de-feminize me at all. I played nude for the first time in this performance. And I was standing there naked under the gauze, which is just this thin stuff that you bandage your finger with, you know. And Max Newhouse had on red leotards and ears. No, he had on red leotards. That's what he was playing his percussion with. And Jim Tinney had on the fur ears and the fur G-string. And the police came, and Mr. Seaman came running to me backstage and he said, Charlotte, whatever you do, don't call the police. I said, I already have. Why not? He said, because we are breaking every law in the world. He said, you can't have the fish bowls hanging in the animals. You can't have the chimpanzee. You can't feed the audience. You can't go around naked. And he started in all the things we can't do, and the police came in. So the police just looked at us, and at this moment the chimpanzee comes walking up without the trainer in her little blue dress. Her name was Priscilla. And it's against the law. You can't have a chimpanzee without the trainer holding the chimpanzee. And so for the first time, I don't know how it happened, but she got lost from her trainer and she was wandering around. The policeman's terrified, and he looks, he said, well, who's going to prefer charges? Because we're all dressed in our way we're dressed. The person that had handcuffed Paik, they ran him down the fire escape and caught him. He was dressed in a suit and necktie. He looked wonderful, but the rest of us, you know, we really looked terrible. Well, Mr. Seaman started peeling off $10 bills. And the policeman would say, she's naked under the gauze. $10. The chimpanzee has no guardian. $10. And it went on. The policeman, he was going down the list of all these things that was wrong. And you're throwing food at the audience. $10. About $100 later, they left. And Mr. Seaman was so mad at me, but we got Paik free. I just wanted to tell you, in that second festival, the important thing was a change of the direction, because meeting Nam June Paik and the pieces that he started writing for me were unlike anything I'd ever played before in my life. He wrote the piece for me where I play the swan to the halfway point. I stop, I go into an oil drum of water, I come out dripping wet, and I finish the swan. He wrote the striptease piece for me that year where I play a few measures of Bach, take something off, continue Bach, continue stripping until I'm totally nude on the floor with the cello on top of me. And we do that piece, we splice it back and forth with film. Sometimes we use Stan Vanderbeek film, sometimes we use Robert Breer film. And that's called Sonata for Adults Only. Another historically important thing that happened that year is that George Machunas, the director of Fluxus, started picketing us. And I had never been involved in a picket before, and Allen Ginsberg was with me as I walked in the hall, and I didn't know what to do to pass a picket line outside of an art event. And he said, here, follow me. So he grabbed the picket sign, he gave me a picket sign, he said, now come on, follow me. So we picketed our own performance in a circle there right across the street from Carnegie Hall in Manhattan. And I was in my first picket line, and it was my performance, my festival. I was picketing myself, and then when it came time for us to perform, we put our picket signs down, went in, and did our performance. But that became that was the beginning of the long fight that George Machunas and I had through the years. That he felt that his artists shouldn't be in the festival, they should only do his Fluxus things, and I felt that the artists should do absolutely everything, perform everywhere, and go everywhere that they can, and be a part of anything and everything. So George and I disagreed on that. I hope you like this TV bra. It's called TV Bra for Living Sculpture. Nam June Paik made this for me in 1968. He completed it, and we premiered it at Howard Weiss Gallery.
The cellist Charlotte Moorman in 1964 when they performed together in a theater event by Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. Their performances since then have attracted much notice, including on one celebrated occasion, the official attention of the police. Sex has been a main theme in art and literature, says Paik. Why should music be 50 years behind?
So you might wonder why I do these things, because I did have an education in the South, my homeland, and then I came to Juilliard School of Music. I do these works because I find them very exciting. They present a certain fulfillment to me that I do not receive in the traditional works. Paik, watch it. Is there some way you can do this without killing me?
Charlotte, this is John on behalf of John and Yoko. I wondered if you'd seen The Village Voice, page 30, Yoko's ad. Also, the review on whatever page it is doesn't seem to mention about the maze. Do you think it's a plan? I think they're a pair of bastards, whoever it was. And also page 31. But we don't care about that because on page 30...
Charlotte, either you or Howard Rice must write a letter to the Village Voice protesting Fred McDowell's censorship of my name from that article, or I'll never do anything for you or anybody else again. And I'm pretty...
Okay, I'm calling from the gallery for Charlotte, and you can call and pick her up about 10 after 4.
Frank, this is Joe. If you can call me tonight, try to call me if you can. I'm at home. Thank you. Charlotte, be sure to pick up a copy of this week's Village Voice. Beautiful pictures, beautiful articles, all by Fred McDowell. It's great. So, be sure and get it. Howard. Hi, this is John Cage, Charlotte. My number is 989-7132. I'm very sorry that I wasn't present at the festival that you had recently, and I want to explain to you why I wasn't. Bye-bye.
This is your friend, Dimitri. Is either one of you there? Nevertheless, I'm calling to let you know that you can keep the speaker for your whole engagement. If we do need it, we'll bring you another one, so you don't have to buy one. Okay? I probably won't be home tomorrow. If you want to call early in the morning or late tonight, I'll be home. LO9-7167. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow night at Tambellini's. Are you going? I'm not sure if I'm going to go, but if you're going to go, maybe I'll see you there. Bye.
Hello, Charlotte. This is Mom. Please call. This is Thanksgiving Day. Happy Thanksgiving. Please call as soon as possible because Nana wants to know when you will be here today. I hope that you will get in touch with this recording. Okay. Call as soon as possible. Tu veux qu'on laisse un message? Charlotte, Irene calling. Jean is home. Call Jean Dupree at 228-3054.
Hello, Charlotte. This is Dimitri. Or Frank, are you there? I'd want to talk to you, but mainly the message is that you can keep the speaker. I just wanted you to be sure that you knew so you weren't going out and buying another one. I'll probably be home maybe tonight. Bye.